So, what is CW? CW stands for continuous wave. This is the simplest form of modulating a radio signal, which is why it was the first method used. Simply put, when you press down on your key, you're turning on the carrier or radio signal. When you lift up, you're turning it off. That is it. Now, in reality, there's way more to it, but for the purposes of this lesson, I will leave it there. In a later lesson, I will get into zero beating and other things. So what do you need to get started? The first thing you need is a key or a paddle. I really recommend starting with a straight key, but if you don't have one and you already have a paddle, you can start there too. Second, you need something to make the tones. You can use a practice oscillator if you're using a straight key. If you're going to use a paddle, you can use either like a Morse-Arino, an external electronic keyer, or you can just use a CW capable radio. I would just use what you have. There are other options out there too, but I won't get into them here. If you would like to see more on practice devices, let me know in the comments, and I will do a separate video on that topic. For a tone oscillator and a straight key, there really isn't anything to set up. Just start using it. If you plan on using a Morse-Arino, there are plenty of YouTube videos on that device, including the one that I did a while ago for setting up those. For the rest of this lesson, I'm going to use what you likely already have, and that is your radio. Let's move on to setting up your radio to be your practice device. Sometimes the terms used differ from what I'm about to tell you, but most are close enough that you can figure it out. You may have to dig into the manual to see how to get to some of these settings, as there's no way to cover all of them here. I will be using my Yaesu FTDX10 to show you how things are set up. The first thing you need to do is go into CW mode on the radio. Next, you need to ensure that the transmitter is not transmitting. On many radios, including the FTDX10, you need to turn off break-in. This essentially disables the transmitter, but the side tone will still be heard when you engage the key. Now, for using a straight key on the Yaesu, I need to turn off the keyer. On other radios like the ICOM 7300 or even my Elecraft KX2, you have to change the keyer mode from iambic to straight. The other things you may want to change are the pitch and side tone volume to your liking. The pitch is an important thing to understand. On most modern radios, you can change the pitch like you can on the FTDX10, but this actually does two things. First, changes the pitch of the side tone. But there's something else it is doing you really need to understand, and that is it changes the frequency of the beat frequency oscillator. Now, I won't get into the specifics of the BFO here, but whatever you set the tone frequency to is what you need to tune to while listening to other stations. If you have a tone frequency set to 700 Hertz, you need to hear the other station signal at 700 Hertz as well, so you're on the same frequency as them. Now, I'll get into this in a later video, but I want you to be aware of it now. If you're using a straight key, you can just start to practice sending. The tone will play as long as you hold the key down. Don't worry about how fast you can send at this point. It is much more important to have well-formed characters so that others can understand you. Also, make sure you're leaving enough space between the dits and the das, but also enough space between characters and words. A DAW is 3 dits long, and there is 1 dit space in between each dit or DAW. There is 1 DAW or 3 dit spaces between each character and 7 dit spaces between words. Don't get too wrapped up in this. But the point is to learn good habits up front. Unlike learning to copy, while learning to send, you want to start slow and build your speed over time. If you followed the guidance, you already know how to copy the characters. So learning to send them is just getting your hand to form those characters. Put your effort into good timing before trying to speed up. Speed will come with time and practice. Unlearning bad timing is hard to get. So get this right from the start. Go ahead and practice sending a few characters that you already know. You will notice that most paddles have two levers, or what I call paddles. For most setups, the paddle on the left is for DITs and the one on the right for DAWs. This will become second nature, but if you forget, take your right hand and hold it up like this. Notice that the thumb, which is on the left, is shorter than the index finger on the right. DITs are shorter than DAWs. This is the way you will likely want to send if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed and want to switch so that the DIT is on the right and the DAW is on the left, most radios will allow you to reverse it. The reverse setting on a radio can also correct the orientation if your paddle is wired backwards. Starting out, let's set our keyer speed to 12 words per minute and ensure your keyer is enabled or set to iambic depending on your rig. Now with your thumb, press and hold your thumb on the left paddle. Notice that it is sending a bunch of DITs. Now press your index finger on the right paddle, and it starts sending a bunch of DAWs. Now hold your thumb on the left paddle, and while keeping the thumb depressed, squeeze your index finger and notice that it starts alternating between DITs and DAWs. This is what is known as squeeze sending, and some that are well accomplished will use this to their advantage. I will not be getting into this during this course. For one, it's a very advanced topic, and two, I don't use it myself. But I do want you to be aware of it if you start getting that effect, and then you'll know why. Go ahead and practice a few characters that you already know. Next, let's move on to hear, say, and send. Before we start sending, there's one more setting I want you to go to, and that's this bell. And what this is going to do, it's going to give us a little gap after it tells us what the character is before it sends the other one. And let's set this to 1000 to give you a second between when it says what the character is before it sends the next one, just to give you that little bit of time for a kind of a brain reset. So let's go ahead and let's hear a few characters, say them, and send them. W.
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 V.
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 So you get the idea. And then once you get to where you can do that comfortably, and don't spend a lot of time on that, you don't need perfection. You know, you're going to make mistakes. If you make a mistake on a given one, don't try and do it again in the time allowed. Just wait till it comes up the next time. It'll save you on frustration. If you find that there's characters that give you a lot of trouble with the key, well, then just practice those without the time limit on there and without having to hear it. You know, just practice those and then move on to the next set. So that covers the basics of sending CW. Now, I know I breezed through this stuff quickly, and if there's something you don't understand or need more for clarification on, leave me a comment. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Or if need be, I'll do a supplemental video. Now, on to the next lesson.